Welcome to the Retirement Evolved podcast with certified financial fiduciary Adam Bruno.
Yeah,
and here we are again. Always a great time to get together with my friend Adam Bruno. We are here again, whether you want us to be or not. I am Bill Seller, and Adam is a certified fiduciary, private wealth manager, founder, CEO, and I think he mops the floors as well.
And cleans the toilets.
At Evolution. At Evolution Retirement Services and Evolution Wealth Management. How are you, sir? Oh, goodness.
Bill, I'm doing wonderful. You know, we always have too much fun when we do these podcasts.
Yeah,
it's a little crazy.
If you could hear the stuff that gets left on the floor, you'd... Oh, man. Well, listen, before we get started, I'd like to ask you that are listening to please go ahead and hit your subscribe, like, favorite, whatever kind of button you have on the podcast platform you're listening to us from. We appreciate you very much and would love to build our audience and have you be a part of it. So again, if you could subscribe, like, or favorite us, we'd really appreciate it. I was really excited to talk to you today, Adam, because the whole world is buzzing about the big lottery winner. Guy in Illinois won, and we may never know who it is, $1.3 billion. Now that's if he takes the annual payment, he'd get $1.3 billion. I did not see, though, and I haven't looked up how many years that would be, but I don't know that he'll ever see all of it. Or if you're willing to suffer a little bit and you take the one-time buyout, just a little over $780 million.
Right. I think a key issue there is you give them the opportunity to hang on to the money and kind of grow it for you, right? Or you take your lump sum and bet on yourself to do a better job than the state's going to do growing the money, right? So I personally, in my position, I like to see people take the lump sum, but that's just me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I'm sure you've had lottery winners come in, and they're clients of yours and all that, and they've had to make that same decision. I'm not trusting anybody's government to do better than I can do with my money.
Amen. I'm telling you, I think there's something to be said about that, Bill. I really do. Perfect example is the IRS, right? They're so far behind right now, and you could send in a payment, and then 2 months later, you get something in the mail, a nasty letter saying, "Hey, where's your payment?" And it's like, right. Oh, never mind, you already sent it in. And we're giving these people millions and millions of dollars every year.
Well, we talked about it on the last podcast as far as Social Security goes, right? I mean, right. I'm pretty sure I could have made a lot more for myself if I had taken the money that went into my Social Security account and I invested it. I could have done a lot better.
I believe that. I firmly believe that. It's why I see so many people saying, I'm just going to wait till 70 because it's such a big difference between, 67 or 67 and a half or 66 and a half and 70. But to me, it's like, wow, you're going to wait till 70. We just don't know what's going to happen, right? Are you really going to enjoy that extra money for as long as you would have if you took it at 67? There's just so many factors.
That's why we have folks like you in our lives to help us understand it better.
I'll do what I can, Bill. You know I love helping people. I got into this business to make a lot of money, and I ended up with a passion for helping people. You make enough money, and you just realize, hey, what is my legacy going to be? And I know it sounds cheesy and corny, but that's the truth. That's where it hit me. I'm looking at my kids growing up, and I'm like, what are they going to see? What are they going to remember? Either you can make a difference or you can make a lot of money. You can't usually do both. In our industry, you can, which works out well for me. But in most industries, you can't.
Well, listen, I wanted to get your take on the lottery winner and.
The first thing, Bill, the other thing that's very important, if we're talking about lottery winners, obviously it goes without saying, you need to make sure that you can find a reputable CPA. You need to find a reputable advisor, air quotes, right? I mean, that's the big thing. And you also, believe it or not, I would say the most pressing need that you're going to have, the first thing you should do is get with an estate planning attorney. That's the first thing that you should do. You need to make sure everything is accounted for. You need to make sure you know where things are going. You can have trust set up. That's the best way that you can protect your winnings right now is to get with that estate. And that should be the first call. The CPA, the wealth management team, all that stuff, that's great. But you definitely want to get with an estate planning attorney first, and you don't want to go out and buy your Ferrari or whatever. Obviously you can do those things, but get your foundation in place first so that you know everything is set, right? That's the important thing to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. And once I get a hold of my long-lost uncle in Illinois, I'm going to suggest that to him right away. So.
Yeah, suggest it to tell him, hey, listen, and you're never going to be able to spend this money, Uncle Mike. Just give me about $10 million. We'll call it even.
Yeah, so at least the The recession we're either headed into or already in is not going to be a factor for that guy, I can tell you that. And,
well, inflation could be. That's why I said it's kind of a bad idea to let somebody else control the money instead of taking the lump sum, because you're still at the mercy of inflation. Inflation's the highest it's been since 1980. It's 9.2%, and I'm sure 1980 was the last time we had double digits. I'm sure we're going to see double digits this year. I'm really confident in that statement. So inflation can have a really big effect on Uncle Mike's money, right? On the Mega Millions winner there. That's why it's so important to me, especially in this environment, to take the lump sum instead of continuing to let somebody pay me a certain amount of money every year, because purchasing power is going down every year. So to me, it's just a no-brainer. But that's my opinion.
Well, you know what they say, 780 million in the bush is like two. Well, I don't know what that means.
780 in hand is better than 2 in the bush.
Yeah, something like
1.5 in the 1.5 billion in the bush.
Whatever.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out later.
Yeah, for sure.
But as far as the recession goes, if we are headed into one, this one could be very different.
We don't know if it's a recession. What we can say is that if it is one, it's not like anything we've ever seen before.
That is Wall Street Journal senior writer John Hilsenrath, and he is pointing to the GDP and unemployment numbers being out of sync. When I heard him talk about that, of course, my first thought is, what does he mean by that?
Yeah, I think what he means is we have a lot of, and we talked about indicators on a few of our podcasts, but when you talk about the GDP, the unemployment rates, all indicators, right? So what he says when it's not going to be like anything we've seen in history, because we're dealing with something brand new. These are indicators that we don't normally see acting the way that they're acting together, right? I think I mentioned this two podcasts ago. We were talking about how interest rates in the market are now moving simultaneously down together. Now, that has happened in history before, in the 1920s, in 2008, for a short period in 2000. So obviously we know that those weren't good times when these things happened. So what he's bringing up is indicators that don't normally react the way that they're reacting. So it's showing us, the tea leaves are showing us that this is something completely different, albeit it's probably going to be just as bad, but it's something we haven't seen before.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'm a little confused because, we're all talking about inflation being where it was in the late 70s, early 80s, but you're saying this isn't the same thing.
No, what I'm saying is some of the indicators we look for in environments like that of high inflation, it's just not cooperating with the data that we have on file, right? We would expect to see a lot higher of an unemployment rate, or we might expect to see GDP numbers operating a certain way. So I guess what this gentleman is saying, and he's been writing for them for a long time, what he's saying is it just doesn't add up right now compared to anything else we've seen before, based on the numbers that we're looking at, GDP, unemployment, interest rates, those types of things.
Okay.
So that's where it's, not to say that it won't be as bad as the 70s or 80s, or that we're not going to continue to see rising inflation rates or anything like that. It's just that there's not data we can't look at the tea leaves and say, well, this has happened before. How did we solve this problem before?
Right.
We can't do that in this situation.
Yeah, okay. And then do you think that the Fed raising the rate like they just did again is really going to do anything? Because it hasn't so far, apparently.
I was really surprised that it was only 75 basis points. I thought they were going to go a full percent. I really did. I know that there's potentially about 2 more times that we're going to see raises this year. And it all goes back to this idea that we should have been doing it between 2011 and now. 2008, I get it. Housing market crash. We need to keep interest rates low so people are still encouraged to buy houses and still encouraged to go out there and buy things. But it's just a different world today because of the fact that we waited so long. And I think that contributes to this whole idea of the data isn't really lining up. We haven't seen this before because that's a situation that was caused by us, by us artificially holding down those interest rates. What's going to happen is we're going to continue to see interest rates rise. And because our unemployment hasn't been affected greatly, we're going to continue to see people paying. People are going to get squeezed more. We're just going to have the cost of paper is going to go through the roof, and people are going to have to live with it. I just bought a car the other day, and I probably didn't need to, but I did anyway. And the car was 4%, right? And I'm thinking, wow, I love this because everything else right now is 6, 8, 9%.
Yeah.
So I got a really good deal. I just got lucky. But that's those types of deals are not normal anymore. Even at the beginning of the year, going into last year, you could still find 3.5, 4% interest rates. You can't find them right now. It's just it's darn near impossible. So people are going to start to get squeezed more, and it's going to continue to squeeze us to a point where people aren't going to have a lot of extra cash at hand. The interest rates being low meant they had much lower payments, more cash at hand to spend more money. So that leaks directly into the GDP then. What are we spending money on? If we can't spend extra money, we would expect GDP to kind of go down a little bit. So it's just a nightmare scenario as far as trying to figure out which way this thing's going to slide.
Well, they probably only raised it 75 points because, according to the White House, we're not in a recession.
Oh, God. Don't get me started. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. They were talking about Brittany Griner and the other gentleman who's stuck in Russia. They have another gentleman there.
Yes. His name is Paul Wheeling. Paul
Wheeling, that's what it was.
No,
Wheeling. I knew it was Wheel something.
Wheeling.
And what was his story? He was there was he a reporter?
Ex-U.S. Marine Paul Whelan.
Ah, okay.
And he was arrested for espionage in 2018, which he denied. And he was convicted and sentenced in 2020. So it took him 2 years to even get, sat in a prison for 2 years before he was even on trial, apparently.
Well, that was done on purpose, right?
Yeah,
the longer
sure.
he
It's
sits
all
in prison,
political
the better the story is, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't, the story gets covered up then and people forget about it.
Right.
Anyways, they're stuck there. And now Russia is telling us, we'll trade them back to you for a convicted murderer that we have here in our country. They want us to trade this convicted murderer back to Russia, and we can have Brittany and this other gentleman back, who, by the way, are being detained. Whether you agree with morality or what the morals behind it, Brittany obviously made some choices with, marijuana and stuff like that, whatever. But they're being detained for a reason. It's a political chess match right now, and it's testing the waters and trying to push a little bit, see how hard we push back. My idea was, why can't we just give them Biden and Kamala, and they can send Brittany and this other gentleman back to us? I think that's a win for everybody. I'm sorry. I was thinking about it the other day.
Well, you know what? You're thinking, and that's a good thing.
And then you see that President Biden, and I'll call him President Biden because he's still our president, he tests positive for COVID again, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's so smart and so into this COVID movement and, oh, my God, we have to control this. We have to do this. It takes 2 days for them to realize that President Biden was given Paxlovid, which a side effect of Paxlovid is that you test positive again quickly, within the first 2 weeks. And nobody thought to talk about that. They just they turned it into this panic, right? It's just further proof that we're creating this narrative of panic in the media. And it's a common occurrence. I took Paxlovid when I had COVID, and I had a horrible taste in my mouth, and I didn't test positive again, but there are side effects. There's side effects to any medication. So rather than being scientific about this, as they claim that they've been doing since the beginning of this pandemic, they're spreading this mass panic that, oh my God, the president has COVID again. What's going to happen?
Yeah,
it drives me crazy.
That's why you can't trust anything you read.
I know.
At that point, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Right.
But shifting gears a little bit,
Sure.
I ran across this article in U.S. News and World Report saying that if you want to retire soon, but you're worried about the stock market and the economy in general, they put out a list of 7 things you should do if you're thinking about retiring in a recession. They came up with a list where it says to look at financial projections, evaluate your portfolio, consider your work options, understand health expenses, review your Social Security benefits, lower living expenses, and then talk to others. And,
God. That's the kiss of death.
Well,
right
I was going to say, the point of talking to others is that you can find out what they're doing, but...
When was the last time your friends were honest with you when you were on the golf course?
Well,
think about it. We're only getting 3 mulligans, but somebody took 9. Now we're talking to them about their money.
Yes, you promised me you would never bring that up, but okay.
I'm sorry, Bill. I'm sorry.
But also, when you talk to your friends about what they're doing, that glove doesn't fit you, right? I mean, not everybody's plan is built for somebody else.
How often are they going to be honest about the problems
Right.
that they're having? Everybody wants to live with their rose-colored glasses on. I mean, most people aren't going to talk to you about the problems that they ran into. They're going to talk to you about how great their Morgan Stanley advisor is or something like that.
Right.
I mean, it's just... they want to feel like they're doing something right so much that they're willing to ignore some of the indicators here. What I love about this list, when we say evaluate your portfolio, that is probably the best thing on that list that you can do, because you have to make some real decisions about what you want your lifestyle to look like when you retire. and how much that's going to cost. That's why I never use the term budget with the families that we serve. Retirement is not something like when we were working, we can just put a price on it and say, yeah, I'll be good with, $5,000 a month. We're going to have things that we want to do, grandkids to see, places we want to travel, things that we want to buy, things that you've been waiting for until this day to do, right? And it's amazing to me how many families continue to push that off by using the word budget. At this point, you have a lifestyle. Now, when you talk about lowering your living expenses, to me in retirement, that seems impossible. Who wants to do that? I mean, who wants to change their lifestyle? Retirement is supposed to be about maintaining your lifestyle and then having a little bit more, not, well, let's lower our lifestyle so that we can retire. Now, the medical costs and exploring the medical and the health expenses, that is by far, I think that's number 2 on the list with evaluating your portfolio, because if you're retiring at 62, you're going to have a little bit of a gap there between the time that you could take Medicare and then Medicare supplements. So you have about 3 years. So you've got 3 years of insurance costs at that point. So there's many options that you have that need to be explored. And with successful families, I see successful families retire when they're 60 or when they're in their late 50s. And we have this gap that needs to be bridged with the medical expenses. Now, again, if you're healthy, it's not a horrible place to be in. You can get short-term plans. They call them short-term, but they last up to 3 years now. So if you retire at 62, you can have a plan in place till you're 65. Now it's going to have a high deductible. It's going to have, a $5,000 or $6,000 deductible, and you're not going to get like copays and things like that, but you will get breaks on your trips to the doctors. You'll get a different price than you would if you were paying out of pocket. So this idea of, having that type of insurance in place just for, catastrophic events until you turn 65, I see too many people waste thousands and thousands of dollars a month. And the deductibles and the out-of-pocket costs are almost similar to that of short-term plans, but they want to have a regular, HMO or PPO, so they're going to pay $1,500, $2,000 a month minimum for that. And it's not really that great of coverage compared to what you're getting from a private plan. So those are things that need to be explored. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about that wants to learn more about that. Those are some big things that I see, though. And evaluating the portfolio comes down to this idea, well, what am I able to realistically get from my portfolio towards my income? And that could be through dividend stock. It could be through, capital gains, whatever it is. You have to have a real picture of what the income looks like, right? So, those are all things to look at as well. And most of the time when I see somebody come in, even in retirement, they haven't adjusted their portfolio enough to modify how they feel about risk and how they feel right now. So that is a number one, I would say, priority, looking at the portfolio, then getting a handle of your health expenses. Considering your work options, what does that even mean, Bill? Does that mean, hey, maybe I can go work at Walmart part-time and supplement my income a little bit? Like, who wants to do that? Nobody wants to do that when they retire.
Yeah, I see that. But I guess staying busy by maybe driving the beverage car to the golf course or something could be fun.
Hey, yeah, or parking the golf carts.
Yeah,
that's fun. Free golf. There you go.
Just to do
it should support your lifestyle, though. That's what you're saying, Bill. You're saying that if they're going to do something, it should support your lifestyle, what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. And, because I watched, I think what happens a lot of times to people is that they retire, and for 40 years of your life, you're used to getting up, going to work, coming home. You've got a routine. But folks retire sometimes, and then they do feel a little bit lost without something to do. I know my grandmother, God bless her, wonderful grandmother. I would not have wanted to work for her. She ran the nursing ward. She ran all the nurses at a hospital for 40 years. Can't prove it, but I think that's who Nurse Ratched was based on, was my grandmother, according to the people that worked for her. But anyway, she was every day, same thing, in charge of all these people, retired, sat down. We lost her within 4 years. Oh, so I think doing something is very important when you do retire, whether it's helping a charity or just volunteering or whatever.
You know what? I changed my mind, Bill. I agree with you 100% on that. Just from that perspective, I agree with you, especially if you're a successful person and you've found success your entire working career and all of a sudden you just stop. I mean, your lifestyle is built around, your health is built around what you do every day when you get up, and then all of a sudden to just stop. What a shock on the body.
Right. And I mean, if you're fortunate enough to retire and you saved enough where okay, for the next 3 years, I'm doing nothing but traveling, that's fine too. I mean, you're out doing stuff. But if for most people, right, who are or not blessed to have enough to just pack it up and go for a couple of years, I think it's a good idea. And I also like when you say you agree with me, because that doesn't happen very often.
No, I do. I see, it's hard because I see it from one side and then you're seeing it just as Joe Blow off the street, right? And that's who I really need to make sure understands all of this. So I could totally see this idea of just for your own sanity and your own health, finding something that you're interested in. That's why I said, if it supports your lifestyle, if you're a golfer and I've got a very good friend of mine, good friend of the family, Tom and Patty Mara. They're like parents to me. I grew up with their kids. Tom works at a golf course and he loves to golf. So he works there part-time and, he gets to get out and he got to meet Josh Allen the other day from the Buffalo Bills. I was really jealous. He sent me a picture. I said, wow, Tom, you look even shorter than normal. So, but to that point though, he found something that he likes to do and he was able to find something to fill his time doing something that he likes. So that probably goes a lot longer for health and happiness than just being done and retiring, right? I from my perspective though, I don't think anybody wants to retire and then get a part-time job just because they need that money to still support the lifestyle.
Right. Now that I understand. Yeah, I get that. So now if you are fortunate enough to retire and what you want to do with your money is make charitable donations and then claim that as a tax deduction, which you should, make sure that you fulfill what some people call the magic language requirement. And Adam, you see Adam's laughing already. This came up recently. A woman made a very large donation to a museum, but she was denied the tax deduction because of something she missed. So let's talk about that. What did she miss, and does this apply to all charitable donations?
Yeah, it really does. So what'll end up happening is the standard deduction in our country is $26,000, somewhere around that. The standard deduction ever since the Secure Act and the Trump tax cuts. Now everybody gets $26,000. If your deductions don't go above $26,000, then you don't get the credit for it because the IRS essentially has already given you $26,000 in deductions. So to your point, what I do is I see people who are, if they give $5,000 to the church every month, that's $6,000 for the year. But if that $6,000 with their other itemized deductions does not exceed that $26,000, they're not getting credit for the deduction. And it's especially painful when I see people taking the required minimum distribution, they're depositing into their bank account, and then they're taking that money and giving it to the charity or the church of their choice, and they're not getting the deduction anymore. So what you can do, Bill, and everybody can write this down a little bit if they want, it's called a qualified charitable distribution. And you have to be over 70 to do it. But in most cases, that's when we find ourselves trying to do a little bit more charity is when we reach that age because now the numbers are all adding up. But what you can do is you can actually have whoever's holding your IRA, your retirement account, your 401k that's been transferred into the IRA, whoever's holding that, you can have them cut a check directly to the church or the charitable organization of your choice. As long as the check goes directly from the IRA itself to the charity, then you're taking advantage of that tax break because that's less money that you'll have to take out later on and pay taxes on. So that's the way that you do it. As far as what this poor lady did, I need a little bit more detail, but those are the most common ways that I see people missing out on the deductions.
Yeah, so she made almost $500,000 charitable donation to a museum. And the museum sent like a 19-page document. She had that attached to her tax return. They did what they had to. But what they didn't have was something called a contemporaneous written acknowledgement from the museum explicitly saying whether or not she received goods or services in return for the donation, which she didn't.
Oh, but they didn't have it in writing that she didn't.
Right, so they denied her tax deduction.
Oh gosh, I'd be fighting that one, Bill.
Well, I think she
talk
is.
about pain. You're upset about paying taxes on your refund. Imagine this poor lady, $500,000 doesn't even get the deduction.
No.
I tell her to see what she could get for goods and services now after that happened. I mean, she needs to go back to the table and say, "Hey, listen, I didn't get the deduction. Do I get a annual pass? What are we talking about?"
Spend the night with Ben Stiller or something like that.
I knew where you were going with that, and that's one of my favorite movies. So I hear you. Like, get Ben Stiller in there, get Achman Ra, the characters in there. Let's
party all night.
Spend all night. Make it an event. I mean, really though. I mean, that's just a darn shame. That's it, and that's a perfect example of why you need the right team. Our attorneys would have spotted that with the size of that kind of a donation. That's why we have estate planning attorneys here, because those are things that are very easy to miss. So obviously, I don't know that I've had a family. I take that back. I have someone who continually contributes to the University of Miami, and he wants he's already had one of the rooms named after him at the football stadium there
nice.
for the players.
Yeah.
But he wants a scholarship to be, because he played there. He wants the scholarship to be in perpetuity, so he always wants it to be there. So he continues to fund the scholarship as much as he can, so that there's always a scholarship with his name on it for a special player. So I've had that happen, but that was all set up with the correct attorneys. That was all. I mean, he's getting full credit for those things. So
That's because he's got your team on his side.
Right.
So there you go. Well, listen, Adam, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Can't get out of here, though, without mentioning the fact that if you've heard anything on today's podcast that you need more information about or whatever, please feel free to reach out to Adam in several different ways. You can give the office a call at 866-838-3765, and you'll get to talk to Adam. 866-838-3765. Check out taxfreefortmyers.com and make sure you spell out the word Fort. That's taxfreefortmyers.com, and pick up a copy of his free book, They Lied, The Real Cost of Your Retirement, and the things that you didn't know as you headed into retirement. Adam wrote this book, and it's absolutely fabulous. I've got a copy myself, and it does answer a lot of questions and things that you may not be thinking about as you head towards retirement, or if you're already there and now you're finding out they lied. So this is the reason to get the book as well. So
Right. And Bill, when you talk about answering questions, I say it every week, and I'm going to say it again this week. When you call in to talk to us, it's just a conversation. It's not a sales pitch. I think I started out this podcast saying I got in this business to make a lot of money, and I ended up learning that I wanted to help people. And that's what we do. Now, we do identify families that we can work with. We don't work with everybody, though. By design, we don't want to work with everybody. We want to help everybody that contacts us. When we work with somebody, we know it's going to be a lifetime relationship, lifetime commitment to each other. We have the same mindsets, same goals, same thoughts about life in general most of the time. So when we work with people, that's one thing. But most of the people that we speak with, we help everybody that walks through the door, and that's really our mission. We want to be who everybody thinks of first when they have these questions that come up, because we've been talking about them for the last 7 years now. And I don't like to say I told you so or I was right. I learned that my wife gets that privilege most of the time. But I want everybody to feel comfortable calling, knowing that, and you mentioned that Adam talks to everybody that calls. I really do try to do that, Bill. It's been a little bit crazy lately, but if people really want to talk to me, I try and jump on the phone with them for at least 15 minutes just to get an idea of what the situation looks like, offer the feedback that I can. You're never going to go wrong by calling us and just asking your questions, because you're going to get great, honest feedback in a fiduciary way. So.
Absolutely. So again, the number if you want to call is 866-838-3765, or check them out online at evolutionretirementservices.com as well. So Adam, always a pleasure to hang out with you for a little bit here. I hate to cut you short today, but I got to go call my Uncle Mike in Illinois, let him know that I'm here for him.
When you call Uncle Mike, something I was really upset about, Bill, when you call Uncle Mike, I heard that Klondike isn't doing the Choco Taco anymore.
Oh, on top
I'm really
of
upset about that. Maybe Uncle Mike with his $1.2 billion can swing things our way so we can get the Choco Taco back.
I mean, first Popeyes attacks Chick-fil-A, then you got the pandemic, and now you got the Choco Taco. I don't know how much one man's expected to take.
You don't attack God's chicken. Chick-fil-A is God's chicken. Okay, Popeyes is good, but Chick-fil-A is at a whole different level. That was really disappointing too. You're right. I don't know how much more of this I can take.
Oh man. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll get together next week after we've recovered.
All right. Thanks again, my friend.
You betcha. And thank you for listening. Once again, if you could please hit subscribe, like, follow, whichever button you have on your podcast player. We would very much appreciate it. This is the Retirement Evolved podcast with Adam Bruno.
Investment advisory services are offered through Evolution Wealth Management Incorporated, an investment advisor registered with the state of Florida. Registration does not imply any level of skill or training. Evolution Wealth Management's unique CRD number is 307644. You can obtain a copy of Evolution Wealth Management's firm brochure, Form ADV Part 2A, free of charge by visiting advisorinfo.sec.gov. Evolution Wealth Management offers investment advisory services only, where it is appropriately registered or exempt from registration, and only after clients have entered into an investment advisory agreement confirming the terms of engagement and have been provided a copy of the firm's ADV Part 2A. Insurance services are provided by Evolution Retirement Services. Any guarantees mentioned are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company and may be subject to restrictions, limitations, or early withdrawal fees, which vary by the issuer. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. You should consider the charges, risks, expense, and investment objectives carefully before entering a contract. This material has been prepared for informational purposes only and should not be construed as a solicitation to effect or attempt to effect either transactions in securities or the rendering of personalized investment advice. This material is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax, legal, accounting, or other financial advice. Evolution Wealth Management and Evolution Retirement Services do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own tax, legal, and accounting advisors before engaging in any transaction. Evolution Wealth Management and Evolution Retirement Services are affiliated entities.